Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome everyone. Welcome to Drive Electric's State of the Nation report. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Dean Sheed and I work at European Motor Distributors, part of the Giltrack Group, and I've been on the board for Drive Electric for a number of years, and we're very fortunate to be hosting today's seminar. Last Thursday, we held the formal launch in Christchurch with a great crowd and media at Meridian's offices, which we're very pleased to do. And today we launched the webinar version. Now, when an organisation produces a State of the Nation report, you need to make sure you've got enough material to make it significant. When I joined Drive Electric some time ago, I'm not sure we would have had enough material to make about 6 pages, let alone today at around 80 pages. A dramatic change, and that just tells you a little bit about the momentum we have, the topic, and the focus people across the electrification ecosystem have on that particular topic. Now, look, it's a significant report, and today we're going to share a little of it with you. My ask to you is to read the report in its entirety. You'll probably need a wine or a coffee. Please go through it in detail, but importantly, share it with your team and your own ecosystem to get the message out. I, like you, will be using it with my teams here at work because the content of the report can be used in your organisation and with people you deal with on a daily basis on this topic. So please acknowledge it and use it as a reference tool. At the end of the day, we want it as an educational piece to influence and to ultimately continue the momentum we have generated in this electrification journey. Now, a little webinar etiquette. I'm extremely pleased with the number of muted mics I can see in the audience. We've got over 100 people now joining us for the webinar, and that's an excellent response. So unless you're speaking, please have your microphone on mute, and please use the chat function. If we don't have time to address all your questions, we'll come back to you via email later today or at latest tomorrow morning. So we'll use that process. Now, I'd like to introduce our Deputy Chair, who's going to walk us through the material. She's been working tirelessly on this publication for over 3 months with the tight team at Drive Electric. She has been working with contributors, producers and reviewers of the document, and to be frank, she also has a day job, but I think she's done an outstanding job. Please welcome Kirsten Corson.
Thanks for the little bit of a pause. Kia ora koutou. Wonderful to see you all here today. So I'm keen just to give you some top-line summary of the report, and after that we're going to go into a bit of Q&A. We've got some panellists, but we're very keen that you put your questions in the chat. So feel free to add those in at any stage. It's likely with over 100 people here, we won't get to all of those questions, but the fabulous Hannah from Drive Electric will respond to you this week and answer your questions. So also just want to acknowledge and thank Hannah for hosting and organising today, and for the Giltrack Group for your manaakitanga and having us here. It's absolutely wonderful, so thank you very much. So hopefully you can all see the screen now, which is fantastic. So as Dean said, there's a whole lot of people that have contributed to this report, and thank you, many of you are online. I also just want to acknowledge the Drive Electric team that have worked spectacularly hard. Val from Content Cartel, James Walker, and also Hannah, and the whole board. It's been fantastic. Thank you very much. For us, we felt it was very important that we covered the whole ecosystem of mobility in New Zealand. So I know a lot of us on the call, I know many of you are from that light fleet space, but we definitely wanted to get us all thinking about marine, aviation, micromobility, heavy transport, and Drive Electric is certainly very keen to engage with those parts of our ecosystem as well. So getting into it. Okay, I might have to do that. Just a wee overview of Drive Electric. So we've got 3 roles in the market, advocacy, and we're working very closely with all the political parties at the moment. Good news is we've had an email from the Blue team saying that they are very impressed with the report and they're very keen to engage with us. So we certainly want to help shape their policies. So advocacy is huge. Education is another piece, and that obviously aligns to this report. And I'm just going to give a shameless plug for Drive Electric. I'd like to thank all of the businesses that do advertise on our website. It's one of the most trafficked EV websites in the country. And, you know, as one of our members, it was actually Meridian said to us, who are advertising at the moment, we actually really like advertising on Drive Electric because it's not like advertising with Google where the money goes offshore. It stays in the ecosystem. So we've got some great VW ads on the site at the moment as well. So if you are interested in advertising, please connect with Hannah. And the other piece that Drive Electric is focused on is creating these connections. There's a lot of challenges as we decarbonise the space, but it's only as, you know, collaboration and working within the ecosystem that we're going to get growth. So I'd encourage you to look around who's on that call and make some relationships as well. Now, I'm probably talking to the converted here, but it's great to see, you know, why EVs actually make sense for us. We can obviously see from a total cost of ownership model, EVs do stack up, but I guess the points that we're making in the media at the moment out of this report is that we spend $8 to $9 billion a year. And a huge chunk of that with the petrochemical industry goes offshore. And I'll just apologise to some of our members that are online, like Z and PP. But the other aspect is that we spend over $10.5 billion. And sorry, someone on the call isn't on mute. So I'm not sure who's not on mute, but it'd be great if you could mute yourself. It'd be great. Thank you. So we spend $10.5 billion on the social costs, and that's directly attributable to the 2,200 plus people that die each year from transport emissions. So if you add those two numbers up, and then the third number that we're talking to media about at the moment is if we don't hit our Paris Agreement targets, and every single political party right now accepts that we will not hit our 2030 Paris Agreement targets. Treasury have estimated, and it is an estimate because we've got no idea what the carbon price is going to be, but they've estimated that we will be spending around $20 billion a year on offsets, and those offsets will all leave our country. So we'll be paying other countries to decarbonise because we haven't got it together to decarbonise ourselves. Now, transport is the easiest emission for us to tackle, and we all know it's hard, but actually compared to our agricultural sector, it is the one that we need to focus on. And this is the message that we're giving to politicians, by the way. And if you think that our education budget, our annual education budget is $21.5 billion a year, we potentially are going to be spending our education budget in 2030 every year moving forward. So if that doesn't spur you along to create some change and increase our electrification, I don't know what will. So just looking at now at where our emissions coming from, if we're looking from transport, this probably won't be, you know, such a surprise. Our road fleet, 91%, and our passenger car fleet is, you know, close to 50% of that road fleet. So we've got a big opportunity and we need to get cracking. So if we look at our habits, you know, a third of our trips are 2 kilometres or less. We're not actually travelling that far each day. It's only 22 kilometres. We've got a really old, dirty fleet. It's one of the oldest in the OECD, with really high emissions. So we've got, and also looking at Dean saying this, this old fleet has got a really poor health and safety ratings as well. So as we electrify, we have got this great opportunity to clean up those issues. And you'll see from that top stat, 37% of a household's carbon footprint. So this is a really meaningful financial, environmental and social change that we want to make electrifying this country. Now, if we look at what's happening overseas, which is exciting. So I guess the big thing that stood out for me on this slide is 730% growth since 2017. So we've seen significant growth globally. We've obviously got the superstars like Norway at 88% of their fleet, and we're sitting just down at less than 2%. So we've got a way to go, where the average EV spread globally is around 14% as well. So that's got to get up above 30% by 2030. So there's some work to be done. If we look at projections of global sales, this is where we are in 2023, and this is where we need to go. So, 37 million more cars, 36% growth. We've got some work to do. Now, I guess if we're looking at what vehicles are available and what the commitments are, a big impact on us in the last week is the announcement by Rishi Sunak to push out that commitment to ban petrol and diesel cars at 2030 was where the UK was sitting. And they're our biggest right-hand market, and they've pushed that out to 2035, which is disappointing for us. And we seem to have apathy from all political parties in New Zealand making a commitment. So the numbers currently with Labor are tracking to a 2030, but there's certainly no announcement, and it's more likely that it's going to be pushed out to 2035. And when you think about that previous slide, where we've got such an old fleet, it's going to make it exceptionally difficult for us to hit our Paris Agreement targets at 2050 with a 2035 ban on new petrol and diesel cars. So that's a significant thing for us to all consider, because the average age in our cars are spending 2 decades on our roads. If we look at what's happening in New Zealand, we're getting there, over 80,000 EVs. Well done, team. All of you have contributed on this call to that number. The piece that media is certainly talking about this week is that in the last 5 years, we've seen 9.5 times growth in the EV market, which is fantastic. The piece that we're certainly pushing to the media is in the last year, we've seen 70% growth, and this is very much the clean car discount. And certainly Drive Electric is working very hard with the media and also with politicians to keep that in play. If we look at that clean car discount, we've seen over 100,000 rebates, which is very, very positive. And if you think about the emissions that we're actually saving over the lifetime of that, well, up to 2035, that's 3.4 million tonnes. So it's absolutely enormous. We've seen new light EVs available, 152. And when you think about the global market, there's over 300 EVs available, but we are seeing more and more coming into the country. And well done to, obviously we've got Giltrack Group in the room, but all the manufacturers, the work that they're doing to create more range is absolutely fantastic. And we're very much looking forward to some more EV utes, because I don't know about you, but everyone seems to be asking Zilch about EV utes. So they are coming. If we look at that light commercial space, I thought this was an interesting slide. We're only sitting around 1%, and we just want to acknowledge that it's really challenging in this light commercial space. I know there's people on the call that have tried to provide finance solutions in this space to make it more appealing, but this sector, this segment of our fleet doesn't qualify for the clean car discount. So that does have an impact on that EV uptake, and that's certainly something that Drive Electric are talking about with the political parties as well. If we look at our regional leaders, you know, at the launch last week, I can see there is a few Wellingtonians on this call, but I just want to say, Wellington, I'm not sure that you can actually take the gold medal here, because I did challenge Richard Briggs from ECA and said, because of the state decarbonisation fund, which ECA provide, which is a significant discount for our friends in the government sector to go EV, a lot of these vehicles will be registered in Wellington, but they won't be living their lives in Wellington. So I would say congratulations to Tasman. I think that's a gold medal for you, and second to our friends in Canterbury. If we look at the international sales, as I said, Norway is the absolute standout. And, you know, the reason why Norway is such a poster girl, they started in 1990. So it was a very clear strategy by the Norwegian government, and they have had programs very similar to the Clean Car Standard and the Clean Car Discount, except they've been more aggressive than that to drive uptake. We also have seen out of Norway their legislation around having to put in infrastructure in commercial and residential builds for charging has been a game changer, and things like right to charge. If you are a tenant in an apartment, you have to be allowed to be putting in charging infrastructure. So certainly Drive Electric would love to see some of those policies coming into New Zealand. But we're not doing too bad, team, sitting at 13%. So well done. There's work to do to get to Norway, but we're heading in the right direction. So obviously the targets from MOT, we need to get 30% by 2035. So sitting at just below 2%, that's another reason that we need the clean car discount, isn't it? So we need to get growth of over 50%. So there's some work to do. And certainly Drive Electric are working with different parts of this ecosystem to help support this growth. Now, I think it's important that we talk about micromobility. We've seen in that first slide, you know, a third of our trips are 2 kilometres or less. And this slide just shows us the importance from a displacement of the petrochemical industry if we were to adopt micromobility. So we've certainly got some members in the ecosystem that have got e-mopeds and e-scooters and e-bikes, and they have got a significant part to play. So we need to stop thinking just about our fleets, but also think about mode shift and how we could do that to hit our Paris Agreement targets. We are seeing that steady growth in micromobility, and that's something that needs to keep scaling so we can meet our targets. Now, our truck fleet, I was actually surprised by these numbers. There were more EV trucks than I thought, and well done to our members of the ecosystem that have been working hard, and also our team at ECA, which have certainly been supporting and fostering this growth as well. If we look at where global truck sales are going to go with electric, and I know there's a few of us that we're a little bit unsure about whether it's going to be an electric drivetrain or a hydrogen drivetrain. I found it really interesting to learn at one of our EV events last year with at the then Minister of Transport, that may have changed. He had just come back from Scania and Volvo, and they had made the commitment that their drivetrains would be electric, which I found really interesting. And if we look at our bus market, this stat was really exciting. 24% of registrations last year were electric. So well done to the regional councils that have really been driving this EV bus uptake. And when you think about other countries globally that have subsidised bus intake, namely China, has been phenomenal in cities like Shenzhen. So this is a great opportunity for us to decarbonise our mobility, adopt public transport. Marine industry, we got our first EV ferry in Wellington last year, which was very exciting, and we've got a commitment from Fuller's for some PHEV ferries that will be coming to on the water. And I thought the stat around the emissions was really interesting here as well. So whilst ferries only make up 6%, the actual emissions that come out of our ferries is quite horrific at over 20%. So there is a real opportunity to decarbonise the sector, and we're seeing our cousins next door in Australia being far more aggressive with government funding to decarbonise marine, and we would certainly support that as well. Electric aviation, a shout out to Electric Air in Christchurch. They are our only EV plane, but we have got a commitment from Sounds Air to put some 19-seater planes on by 2026. And we've got obviously the big players working on electrification of aviation as well. So, and with that comes charging infrastructure. The only airport at the moment in the country that has got any charging infrastructure for planes is Christchurch, so there's some work to be done. Now, this takes us on to the linchpin of this whole piece of electrifying this country, which is EV charging infrastructure. So we've got over 82% people are charging at home, and it's interesting that 61% of those are charging via their three-pin plug. So there is a great opportunity for the energy companies and the lines companies that are on this call who will have a vested interest in moving Kiwis that are using that three-pin plug to smart chargers. And that really leads into another couple of slides around energy. You know, I guess many of us on this call will get that we don't have enough electricity, and how, you know, we can't go to EVs, you know, the lights will go out in New Zealand. But what this report shows us is that we have enough renewable energy. It's forecast to get to 98% by 2030. We have enough in the pipeline to get us there. And actually what we need to do to get there is smart charging. And I really like this slide because it really shows the importance of smart charging and the part it has to play to allow us. So if you think about that 61% that are charging with three-pin plugs, we need to transition them to smart charging here because that will allow us to electrify this country. The other piece that we're also, you know, mindful of is we are moving to vehicle to load, and vehicle to grid will come into our market in time as well, and that's going to play a significant part. EV batteries, yeah, that's another great question we get, isn't it? About, oh no, the batteries. So I think the exciting thing is we're seeing the advancements in the different technologies. You know, traditionally our lithium ion that's used in our EVs, our laptops, our phones, you know, that's got the rare earth minerals in there, which it's fair to say when EVs came into the market, there wasn't sustainable mining practices. We are seeing those sustainable mining practices emerge. Whether we've solved that complete problem, I couldn't say. The positive thing is we are heading to lithium iron phosphate batteries, which we've seen some manufacturers adopt already, our friends at BYD and Tesla. But the great thing is the move to solid state batteries. That's in development. I'm hearing from manufacturers, some are saying they'll have it in New Zealand by 2026, 2027, but they'll be coming this decade. which is really exciting. A lot longer range vehicles, 800 kilometres plus, depending on the vehicle, and they're a lot lighter. They also don't have those rare earth minerals in them as well. Also, it's fantastic to see the recycling that started in New Zealand with batteries. We're seeing those first Nissan Leafs going in and getting new batteries, and we're seeing those the batteries that are coming out going into home storage as well. And just to update your knowledge as well, with those lithium-ion batteries, when they are being replaced in North America and in Europe, once they've gone in and out of home storage or stationary storage, as it's called, those rare earth minerals are actually really valuable. So they are being repurposed as well and pulled out of those batteries as well, which is positive. Now, hydrogen, we thought we'd better throw in a slide for hydrogen. And I know, a lot of people go, oh, is it EV or is it hydrogen? And I guess our message from Drive Electric to you is we need to electrify everything possible. That certainly is the most affordable option with the majority of mobility. However, whatever we can't electrify, hydrogen will be the solution. And whether that's aviation or whether that's heavy transport, none of us really know. So we need to support, obviously accelerate electrification, but also be open-minded to hydrogen. Now, that's all from me. And what I'd like to do now is just open it up to the panel. And we've got some great panelists, starting with Tim Calder from Meridian Energy. Tim he's one of the leads for innovation and strategy at Meridian. And Meridian are one of our premium members. We also have got Danusha, which most of you know, who entered this market in the last 12 months, but you've become a household name for the work that ChargeNet does. Is amazing around public charging infrastructure. And the fantastic Dean Sheed, host from Giltrap Group, with a really broad role around mobility. So Tim and Dean are on the Drive Electric board, and it's fantastic to have you here today. So thank you for you all to join. And I'll just start with you, Tim, and I'll just go around the room. What's the one thing that's been a standout for you looking at the State of the Nation report, Tim?
Ngā mihi, Kirsten, and kia ora koutou. I guess, you've called out a number of the sort of achievements that the industry has been able to deliver, and it's worth just reflecting on that. And there's a lot of people in this room that continue to fight the good fight against this sort of system that's not set up for this rapid transition we need. So worth reflecting on that. But also the job that we've got in front of us. Like, while we've got 85,000 EVs, there's still 4.7 million that aren't. And while we've got, public charging points in the hundreds, we need them in the tens of thousands. So I do see the report and then listen to the likes of Rod Carr reflect on it. And once again, reminded and motivated again that the upside and the benefits for us are just huge, right? Not just environmentally, but for our society and our health outcomes, for security and our energy independence, but also it just makes so much financial sense across the board. So hopefully others are feeling just as motivated, because we're going to need the community to get the job done and accelerate this uptake.
Okay. Across to you, Dean. What's the standout?
Sure. Look, when I reflect on the report, there's really one word to describe it for me, and that's a single word: momentum. If I go back 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, we talked this topic, we didn't have momentum. We didn't have the full ecosystem participating across, and today we do. Yes, as Tim said, there's a lot of work to do, not afraid of a bit of work. But now at least we've got a plan, and we can get all your businesses focused in one direction to continue that momentum. When I read that report, we're well on the way, but we've got a lot of work to do. What we need to do is to become a little more shall we say, forceful about applying our businesses in the right direction, get government alongside us, get some private public partnerships going, and reap those rewards for the country.
And Tanisha, what about you?
I think for me, and I've got two kind of bookend counterpoints. One is I actually looked at this industry in 2011, so I remember being part of APEV back in the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, really feel for Danny's comments around could we have put 6 pages together? And we could. They would have all have been the spider grapes of doom. Yeah, not certain, definitely no, can't be done. What will happen next? And then I've just been recently up in Europe, and one of the things when we look at the UK, the Netherlands and Germany, New Zealand can put itself back on the front foot. Like momentum, so amped for the ramp is how I would describe it. We've got enough in play at the moment. It's a case of doing more of the same and faster rather than doing something profoundly radical. And that's an amazing turning point in adoption when you hit that.
Yeah. So if we look at your space then, Tanisha, you know, public charging infrastructure, what needs to happen so we can accelerate that? Because many people on this call, it is a real pain point for them where we're, you know, the CCD's been so successful that they're, you just don't have enough public charges. So what can you do to solve it?
So there's a couple of things that are in play again. When some things we need to continue and some things we need to amplify. So I think the continuation of private and public investment in charging is the proven model internationally. And there's some startling stats out of Europe of how much private capital will go into this, and they will bear the weight of the investment if there is seed or participatory capital from the government. So it's an order of 1 to 9 in some other countries once the market's mature. So well worth a tax dollar spend. I think the other thing that's consistently makes the whole process more effective is if you have processes throughout the country that are simple to follow and are quick to get a charge point in the ground. Again, it's not radical, it's not that different every time. So if we could shorten up the times for implementation, have greater cost certainty, that would help the industry. And then there's just the moral. So, you know, a charger should never be left alone. From now, you need to be talking about multiple charges at sites, and that's certainly how we design going forward. And then again, it's around that amplification. So a site that we typically put in now is 6 times more powerful than the site we put in 36 months ago. So those are the things that will really lift the game. And there's some great models in New Zealand. We have already the distributed generators who are part of that next transition, a ready and reliable access regime. And while it's a little bit eyeball drying and doesn't really make a headline, those are some of the really important things that the people on these calls can support.
Great. And just to talk to that too, and you know, Drive Electric is investing a lot of, I guess, time and energy in this ecosystem, working with the charge point operators, the E&A, the lines companies, the electricity, and Tim, you're one of the leaders on that working group. So we do identify that it is a massive issue, and we certainly are trying to bring everyone together to solve it. Included in that also is central government, and you know, well done to you, Tim, and James Walker and the team, because the funding that has both been committed by Labor and National is very much due to the work that you've done. So, you know, well done. That's absolutely fantastic. So if we look down then around vehicles, what do you think is going to happen in the next 12 months? And I guess my second question to that is the big question about price parity. You know, the report shows us through a total cost of ownership model, you know, it stacks up to go EV, but still for so many Kiwis, that price parity is an issue. So what's going to happen? When are we going to have it?
Well, I'm encouraged by where we've come from and where we are today with the consumer offer. And if you look at most brands in the marketplace today, they have a low carbon option, be it a plug-in hybrid or whether it be a full battery electric vehicle. And I know the work and the time it takes for OEMs to talk to their factories wherever they are in the world to convince them of the need to get in that pipeline of supply and then get it to the marketplace. So those conversations have happened. You're seeing the outcome of that now, but what you're not seeing and feeling is what's coming at us over the next 2 to 3 years. And I don't know the exact details for every single brand, but look, I can tell you across the brands that we deal with, there is a tsunami of plug-in hybrids and BEVs being launched and designed by the major OEMs that need to come to this marketplace. So we will see a continuation of that. Plug-in hybrids, it's a bridging strategy, as we know. Full battery electric needs to be in the marketplace. But we are seeing, and I should say, we're not seeing yet, but we will see the effect of the Clean Car Standard. It's a topic that's not really talked about. It's a topic that's not really profiled. Everyone talks around feedback, which I'll get to in a moment. But all the OEMs in the country have been tasked with a particular CO2 level of all the vehicles they import en masse. So, and that started on the 1st of January this year. So by the end of this calendar year, the government will tot up all the vehicles we import. If our weighted average CO2 levels at a particular level, happy days, go into next year. If it's not, there's potentially a penalty coming to that vehicle importer. So you will see importers actually try and calculate the weighted vehicle mix of all the cars coming in over the next 2 to 3 years to mitigate any of those penalties. At the same time, on the consumer side, you've got the fee bait. There's a little conundrum between the blue team and the red team at the moment, whether the fee bait will actually continue. At Drive Electric, we've been a strong supporter of that. We think the consumer needs that incentive, and it will naturally come off at a point in time. Where we see the marketplace today is in a state of flux. We've got people saying, well, if I just hold off my purchase of this particular model, maybe there won't be a fee, but maybe I should be buying my my BEV right now because there is a rebate available. So the market is in a state of flux. What we need is certainty from the government. And with my Drive Electric hat on, I'll certainly be backing the fee-based structure to continue. So we will see more consumer choice, and I hope some supporting structures on the demand and supply side going forward.
Okay, now looking at charging infrastructure, I'll send a question your way, Tim. What advancements do you think we're going to see from a home and a work charging perspective, and what do you want to see?
Look, there's just so much going on in the innovation space as the whole world kind of electrifies. I love geeking out on it, to be honest. But I do here in New Zealand, I think, following some of the demonstration projects that are supported with co-funding from ECA, it's a really good way of keeping across some of the advancements that are going on right here in New Zealand. A few that I will just touch on, battery-backed charging and mobile charging. So that has a real role to play where there's a significant cost related to connecting to networks, or there's real spiky demand, for example, on public charging. We're seeing the likes of Red Phase, Jump Charging, Zenobē, Meridian. We're doing a project as well. I expect to see that rolling out more and more in public charging use cases, but also in fleet use, and in particular heavy trucks and things where you start getting industrial zones, for example, that are electrically constrained. Bi-directional charging, you hear V to X, V to G, V to H, V to whatever. It all really just comes down to using your car battery to power your workplace or your home. And you're seeing more and more cars that enable that technology. But to be honest, today, it's really costly technology. And, is there enough value to justify the potential battery degradations? Big question there, but most importantly, just understanding how consumers feel about that. I think as the technology costs come down, as the battery technology continues to improve, and as more sort of value pools emerge when it comes to flexibility, then vehicle to X technology will certainly play a role in the coming decade. And then you hear things like, the wireless charging, and whilst I would never say never on this sort of technology, and there's certainly going to be some useful use cases for it, from a mass market adoption, I think something like that's a long way down the track. And I guess a key message that I'd apply to anyone that's sort of, directly involved in thinking about electrifying your own business fleet or going electric, don't wait for this sort of stuff. We've come a long way in a short time. We've got some really great, reputable, smart charging providers, for example. Just look at the Meridian, the Drive Electric member list. The AC Smart technology is in a really good state at the moment. So don't hold off on all this other technology before just getting on and electrifying your own fleet or your household.
I think that's a really good point, Tim, and something, Drive Electric obviously talk about a lot is, we pay $18 per 100 kilometres roughly with petrol. If we're using our public charges, it's going to sit around $15 per 100 kilometres. But the big financial and social game changer for us will be that smart AC charger when we're paying $5 per 100 kilometres. And if you're really savvy and you're doing it off peak, it's sitting around $2. So that's a massive opportunity for our country economically to electrify. Now, if you've got questions, please add them into the chat. And I'm just going to go around to our panellists and just to finish up our questions and say, what's the one big thing that needs to happen to accelerate EV uptake? So, Tim, I'll start with you.
Look, I think we've sort of come through a period where the supply of vehicles and the range and the upfront cost has been quite a barrier. And I think we're probably heading into the next 5 or 10 years when it becomes an infrastructure question. So anything that we can do to continue to stimulate and build out not just public, but private EV charging infrastructure is going to be really critical, and great to see the government committing a budget 23 as well as main political parties all sort of recognising that need. And Danusha mentioned around the upside that creates from unlocking private capital as well. So I think that's a big focus area. It's such a key part of the EV driver experience. So we need to invest in that stuff right now.
And Dean?
I'd actually like to nominate 2 topics, actually, either for the political parties or for Santa, whoever we think will give us the best result. And the first one is around home charging. So it's that private charging that Tim's just mentioned as well. If we had something as simple as every new build in the country had a mandated EV charger as part of that setup or was pre-wired for it, I think that would go to a long way to normalising charging at home, and then some sort of structured incentive offer to back charge, so to speak, existing houses. So that would normalise that greatly. And my second wish is actually for the fleet companies and businesses, because if we can get, the tax person in the room or the tax department and talk about tax and FBT and about some incentives for large corporates, because they can be the washing machine of EVs into the second-hand market. They can help us get mass fleet adoption, start to normalise company cars being EVs, and then the secondary output of those cars post 3 years, they can come into that second-hand market at a far lower price point and help out a number of socioeconomic communities in the country and just start to normalise that. So Kirsten, 2 wishes. Thank you.
Fair enough. And Danusha?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Dean and Tim said, and I'm going to add one that I think is more of a challenge just for us as an organisation and participants in the industry. We need to shift our mindset from early adoption and just enough and good enough into mass adoption. And how do you run with a big pack of New Zealanders alongside with you who want to make charging part of their everyday lives? I think that would be probably the biggest mindset that I would encourage people on this call to consider. Project yourself into the world of normal and what do you need to make happen so that everyday Kiwis are everyday EV drivers.
Yep.
Thanks, guys. Really good points. And, Dean, if you think about the policies in the UK, where 20% of new commercial builds have to provision for EV charging infrastructure, and some local bodies have increased that up to 40%, which is, that's the sort of policy that we need. And certainly Drive Electric have been advocating for that sort of policy with government. And then in the UK as well, you have to provision for charging infrastructure with new builds and residential as well. So yeah, absolutely, it's going to be a game changer. Just whilst we're bringing the chat up, I'm just going to do a little plug for membership as well. Just want to acknowledge our premium members, which are Eco, Meridian, Custom Fleet and Fleet Partners. And also just welcoming and acknowledging our corporate members and our essential members. You know, we are a member organisation that is not for profit. So we rely on these membership fees to do the work that we're doing to try and advance this ecosystem. So if you are not a member, we would certainly welcome you coming on board, because it's only by all of us working together that we're going to be able to create the momentum which Dean talked about at the beginning. So that's my little plug. But anyway, Charlotte, first question: have we considered the required infrastructure in New Zealand for the future of battery recycling? Tim, do you want to talk to that, or Dean?
I'm sure Dean will have a few views, but just a couple of things. I know there is a battery industry group that's been formed that's really directly trying to deal with this particular question. It's also an industry that I think will develop over time as the problem becomes apparent. And at the moment, most of the electric vehicles that we've got in our market are still performing as expected. We're also seeing more and more use cases for that secondary use of the battery. You know, we're looking at that for battery-backed DC charging in public, and you're starting to see sort of backup for solar and things. So there's so much more we can do with those batteries before we sort of need to get to that recycling space. But Dean, have you got anything to add on that industry side?
Yeah, look, Charlotte, great question, right? The short answer is no, there's not enough focus on that topic, and there's not enough people getting around a table and trying to work out some solutions. The good work that has been done is by that battery industry group called BIG, an interesting name, but there are a number of partners that established BIG along with the Ministry for the Environment. What we need is to get a rocket under that particular organisation, resource it, agree the plan, and then get some to actually get that sorted. Because battery recycling, you can keep pushing it off, but it will be needed at a point in time. One of the things I would say is the latest battery technology, it's all driven around cells within the actual battery itself. So we're going to go through a phase where it's about cell replacement, not throw out the entire battery because it's dead, to use the wrong phrase. So even refurbishing used EVs in the market will actually be around lifting the lid, taking the modules out, replacing the modules, and then the state of charge can be increased in that car. So in our industry, recycling an EV in the future is fundamentally different from upgrading and recycling a used car of today and being an ICE vehicle. So there's a lot of thought that needs to go in, not just recycling batteries, but recycling the modules within the battery. But big topic, and we've got a lot of work to do in that place, in that area.
Now, Jess has got a really good question around the volumes of misinformation around EVs that's ramping up, and that puts fear and uncertainty and doubt in consumers' minds and is delaying that move. And I guess that was one of the reasons we wanted to put together the State of the Nation report. So you all had a centre of truth that you could refer back to, but certainly Drive Electric is working with the media, and we continue to do that. Today we were on with 9 till noon, and one topic that we made sure we spoke about was battery technology, because that's obviously a big one. So we need more membership funds to be able to do more. So, but we certainly, that was a big part of the State of the Nation report.
There's also an opportunity for members to amplify posts. So Drive Electric puts out posts, charging other companies here put out posts. If you see something and you're like, yeah, true that, then do share it on social media, because it is around, we find pulses of information.
Yes.
And taking the time. So it's not
groundswell.
So it's not always trying to have a constant drip feed, but to sort of have a season of and getting the messages out there. So think about your own If you are in a position where you have even just a light social media presence or something like that, what's a small true fact that you can pepper in there that will kind of inspire people?
Yeah. Tanya, you've got a great question in there about, do we have enough skilled electricians to support the mass uptake of smart chargers and EVs in New Zealand, including the ongoing maintenance and support that EV drivers need? So I'll hand that over to Danusha.
Yeah. So we don't have a constraint on electricians at this stage. So we can find skilled suppliers in New Zealand to install sites. I've worked in truly constrained markets where you've only got sort of a dozen people in the country who can do the thing you need done. That's not the case with the install of modern charging points. I think one of the things that is a wider industry issue for the electricity networks and the transmission lines is the mature and experienced workforce and bringing new people through. So you will see some action around that. I think at the level that most of us operate here, barring the generation transmission, we have sufficient skills, and those are buildable skills. They're not extremely niche.
Yeah. Tim, do you want to add anything to that question?
Yeah. I think to touch on an earlier point from Danusha about this kind of shift from a early industry to one of sort of mass market adoption, we're going to see a mass rollout of private EV chargers. We'll see more solar systems. We'll see more batteries, and no, I don't think we've necessarily got ourselves set up for that workforce that we're going to need in order to enable that. There's actually a really good page on the State of the Nation report that has looks at the put a spotlight on the upskilling our e-mobility workforce, not just electrically. I think a lot of those skills are quite naturally can transition across from other electrical work, but also around the sort of connected technology and the smart technology that we're going to need, and starting to think about the role that virtual power plants and how do we sort of connect and integrate a lot of software systems to deliver really good consumer experiences. I think we just need to keep focused on that.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. I can see we've got some of our one of our members, ECL, on the group as well, and I know they would agree with you, Tim. And I guess the piece that they've joined Drive Electric, and they want us to convey and work on is we need to create a customer journey that is similar in public charging infrastructure as it is to getting fuel, and that response time of fixing charges. So they certainly have concerns as well that the whole digital, technical, electrical experience is something that we're going to need to scale up for this mass adoption as well. Just moving on to our next very pertinent question with climate change. What role could EVs play in terms of energy system resilience in light of some more, of the severe weather events? Do you want to talk to that, Tim? Yeah.
I can touch on that. I mean, in addition to the sort of EV side, you are seeing a continued increase in the rollout of solar and battery systems. It's probably been a little bit flattened recently with, for the first time in a very long time, we started to see costs increase following a bit of material shortage and production out of China, for example, in global shipping. But we're now getting those costs to going down again, and we're starting to see, the likes of Solar Zero and others put in good propositions that'll overcome that. And more generation close to demand sources, of course, really big for resilience, especially if it has to be able to operate when the power's out. So make sure if you're doing solar, you make sure your inverter's capable of that. But there's a huge opportunity with cars and the vehicle to load technology that comes with them. And I think during Cyclone Gabriel, for example, there was plenty of examples where your car was effectively the only generation source that was available to many when the power went out, and we saw people using it to charge their phone, to get internet connection and Wi-Fi up and running, keep their fridges and freezers going, and there was even a local pharmacy there that couldn't get hold of a diesel generator, And that's an essential service, the supply of medication to a customer, to your customers, and they were able to connect up a couple of electric vehicles and keep the lights on of that industry. So huge opportunity that comes with the vehicles, and surprisingly, in a lot of those examples, there was overwhelming surprise at just how little of the battery you actually used to power some of those things. So it's a very large power source at your fingertips.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know, Tim, Zilch has got a customer, and before Cyclone Gabrielle, when we put the EVs in, we were talking to them about the opportunity of battery storage and solar, and it wasn't until after Gabrielle that they rang up and went, okay, I get it now. I get what you were talking about. So that's a massive opportunity. Got a great question here from Sean, which I'm going to direct to you, Dean, around that infrastructure is key. And currently we're populating the vehicle market from the top down. In line with Dean's comments about the used market, this is key to gaining volume, and we need a battery option that suits the 10 to 20k market. Over what time period do we see this being achievable?
Yeah. I wish you asked a tough question.
Yeah.
That's look, that's the short answer is I can't see that happening until the latter part of the decade. So if you're talking about a $10,000 to $20,000 full EV BEV battery, I think that's some time away. However, I think the opportunity will be in reconditioned used batteries. So as I mentioned before, the old school batteries, nickel metal hydride, when the battery had seen its last days, it would be completely replaced. In the current technology battery, it's about these modules. And most of these floor plans with new battery setups, they can have 130 individual modules within it. After a car's been through, say, 3 or 4 years in a fleet situation, it's got a far lower price point. Now, that car can come out owing XYZ. That battery could have a far lower price point, and with some refurbished modules, might get to be a lower price point. In fact, I can see that battery typically in the future being worth more than the car that surrounds it. So that's just my personal view. I'd like to give you an accurate answer, but I don't believe there is one today. We're going to need probably a technology change to get batteries down to that 10 to 20k option price.
What about what we're seeing in the second-hand market already? Sort of there seems to be a fresh wave of coders coming into trade meet,
Yeah.
ex-fleet and things like that. So I think there's not a lot of new cars in the 10 to 20,000 part of the market already in New Zealand, but the imports,
Yes.
second-hand vehicles, and the net fleet coming through. Do you think they'll be the first to populate that bracket?
Look, I do, but unfortunately, not all batteries are made to the one specification. So all the OEMs, I wish they'd play nicely with each other, but they're all wanting their own technology and their own battery style. So one's not fully interchangeable with another. May that happen in the future, but just about time to wrap up.
Yeah. So, team, thank you very much for joining today on behalf of Drive Electric. We really appreciate you coming on board. And I guess to Danusha's point, you've got the State of the Nation report. Please start following those fantastic little factoids out of it. Share them on your social channels. Talk about them with your colleagues. And also, spread the good word around electrification of mobility. Really appreciate you coming on board and look forward to connecting at the next Drive Electric event. Thanks a lot and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, team.
Thank you. Thanks.